had a great day today. We started off with a great opening session, right? The drum troupe. And then Tyler spoke to us about why integration is sexy and why integration is the next big thing. That is an eye-opener as well because integration is making a great comeback. Tyler set the base of why that is, why everything is an endpoint, so we have a trillion endpoint problem, and then we basically need to deal with integration to connect all those endpoints. Asanka basically spoke about, we had Asanka's session, which spoke about the composable enterprise, cell-based architecture, the reference architecture for agility, reference methodology for agility, and how you build an agile enterprise. We had Jehan Mutalif's session, which was on go digital or go home. That was a great eye-opener, right? How Mass Holdings, which is a really large textile organization, went digital, how they're at the bleeding edge, at the cutting edge, how they're transforming the industry. A great session to see how WSO2 is used and how technology should be used to basically transform the industry. And then we finally had Sanjeeva's session, a very colorful session. Right? I think we'll be editing some of those keywords as well, the profanity, right? We usually do that with Sanjeeva's sessions. And Sanjeeva spoke about the cultural aspect, the people aspect of digital transformation. So it's not always technology, but there is a huge organizational aspect, a people aspect as well. Right? So great sessions, but now we are coming back to the real thing. Right? So as Jehan spoke about the real thing, we spoke about the software aspects of this, but we have 4 great panelists here. Jigme has a session tomorrow as well, so you can attend that session. But just to introduce the panel from the top left, your right. So Jigme is the Chief ICT Officer for the Royal Government of Bhutan for the Department of IT and Telecom. Jigme is also a board member of the Bhutan telecom industry, right? Again, state-owned telecom industry. Jigme spearheads the ICT initiative for the government of Bhutan. So the management of the e-government initiatives and basically the strategic planning for the whole of the government, right? So Jigme has a more in-depth session tomorrow on how they use WSO2 to basically transform the industry. And we have a lot of government sector customers as well, especially in Sri Lanka. So we have a project on the local government agency in Sri Lanka. We have a number of projects in the Asia-Pacific region and worldwide. And this will be a good session to compare notes and to see how digital transformation happens in the government industry. Right? Nisela Kodipili is the Chief Information Officer for Nations Trust Bank. Of course, if you're from Sri Lanka, it's a large and well-known bank. But Nisela has been in the banking industry for a long time. He's a veteran of the banking industry. And Nisela also spearheads the FreeMe application, so the digital banking side of Nations Trust. And recently in 2018, it was named as one of the top fintechs in Asia Pacific, Africa, and Middle East, right? One of the top 30 fintechs. So Nisela heads that whole initiative. We've got Yosha Gupta here. So we spoke about, Jigme is from the government industry, Nisela from the banking industry. Yosha is from the World Bank. So Yosha basically is the digital financial specialist for the World Bank as a consultant, basically working for IFC. Yosha deals with multiple banks in the Asia-Pacific industry, building a common API management platform where banks can basically share APIs and share services. Yosha is also a serial entrepreneur. Yes. She's basically been involved in an online portal, basically Lafa, a platform for online coupons. So she was responsible for growing the user base to 800,000 and basically 1 million plus downloads within a span of 1 year. Yosha has had many other startups as well. And then, of course, we have Niranjan Prabhu here, who is the Director Information Technology at the Australian Catholic University, coming in from Sydney. He's also the Chief Information Officer there. Niranjan has been working in the education sector and basically the government sector, retail sector in Australia, and has a lot of experience in digital transformation. Right? So this is a great panel, a varied panel here, and I welcome you all. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Right. So common house rules here. We basically, so in Sri Lanka, so I'm from the Sri Lankan university system, right? So in Sri Lanka, when you ask for questions, when the lecturer asks for questions, there usually isn't questions. We usually write questions in these paper chits and send them up, right? We tried to replicate that, we couldn't. So we are working with this company, basically Imoviz, who, so we will be putting the URL up there, right? So we're working with Imoviz, who have built this survey app. So you can send your questions in through the app. That is if you're shy to ask questions directly. But we're Sri Lankans, we're from the corporate sector, so if you have any questions, just raise your hand. We can send the mics around during the session or after the session. Okay, so let's get started. So we had all these sessions. We basically got the message that software is the next big thing. Integration is the next big thing. Every company is a software company, and software is eating the world, right? But the bottom line there is companies need to go to market faster. So basically, they need to be able to release products faster and get to market faster and beat the competition. And that means they need to be very agile. So my first question so starting with Niranjan is basically, so let's take a step back. And can you explain how digital transformation affects your industry, ACU, and how you have used technology to solve your business problems? So let's maybe spend like 1 or 2 minutes there.
Thank you. We have about 35,000 students who are, most of them coming as a digital natives as well. So that's the extreme end of the technology users we have. And we also have the professors and assistant professors who are other end of the spectrum who resist the change. So the challenge of digital transformation includes a different cohort which we need to make sure the demand from the student cohort is who are ready to consume anything thrown at them anytime, anywhere, how we can actually translate as a business outcome and provide a good experience for them to study, learn, and then promote into the good employability prospects going forward. To achieve that, we need to translate the university strategy into the actionable, and you heard from the previous speakers that how culture is a big stumbling block moving in the digital transformation. It's easy to have all the cell architecture, deliver that, but that stays within your team, but how are you going to translate that into a good business outcome is the major challenge for us. So what we're doing as part of that is to have a clear plan of what are the fundamentals of enabling the digital transformation, build those as the foundational blocks, and then enable that to provide a good, and also define what is the excellent experience for our students and staff. So to provide that kind of experience, what are the key systems and services they touch today and tomorrow, and build the blocks, which could be integration, which could be our content management system, which could be our architecture, which is flexible enough so that we can add on, build, and it has to be always secure and reliable as well, which is we tend to ignore when we're doing the Agile. So we have a plan we started the journey 2 years ago, and we identified the key services which enable the digital transformation, and we built those foundation blocks so far, which integration also plays very key important fact in moving the data from different multiple, some are monolithic applications, some are very open architecture platform. So we've enabled that kind of opportunity to provide that vehicle to anyone who demands that kind of an experience. So that will deliver into a program of work which we can deliver over a period of time.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Niranjan. Yosha, so can you give a brief explanation of the project you're working on?
Yeah. So I think I'd like to talk about the project that I've been most focused on over the last 1 year. So while IFC is a development organization, we've embarked on a very ambitious journey for building a platform called AFIN, the ASEAN Financial Innovation Network. The idea being that we've seen banks across ASEAN, and a lot of these banks which IFC works with are challenger banks who want to innovate, want to use technology, but the pace hasn't been fast enough. So the idea is that we're trying to put together a common sandbox platform for banks to be able to work with fintechs across the region. And everything that we've been speaking about over here from, fintechs should be able to host their APIs on the platform. Banks should be able to use those APIs and iterate fast and test fast and develop things over there and then, take it to market from there. But as a test platform, we want this to be a common sandbox. So this has many components, right, from, a marketplace, an API console, or the sandbox as well. And all of this needs to work together. And a lot of this has been to do with, we've been speaking with multiple banks in the market and explaining the whole concept to them and understanding their biggest problem statements, where are the biggest problem statements, and hence which fintechs, curating the whole process of curating fintechs and getting them to be a part of this platform. It's a complete journey that we've embarked on, and multiple stakeholders involved as well, where the Monetary Authority of Singapore is one of the biggest stakeholders, and the ASEAN Bankers Association, who work with multiple banks in the region, are also one of the big stakeholders. So yes, I mean, digital is at the heart of this proposition that we're building.
Thanks, Yosha. Nisala, so can you also please explain like what you're doing with the FreeMe application, the digital banking initiative as well for Nations Trust?
So basically our digital initiatives are around three main areas. One is basically the engagement. So if you look at the engagement side is the customers as well as our employees. So then the operational efficiencies, like say if you look at operational efficiency side, the robotic process automation, AI, like say the straight-through processing, enterprise architecture reviews, that sort of things. Then the other main area which we are looking at is the disruption.
Right.
So where it comes to FreeMe, open banking, and we have our own the innovation lab where we innovate we have a separate team who does that sort of a thing. So the FreeMe is coming under separate team today. So basically it's kind of coming under a disruptive strategy.
Okay, thanks Nisala. And Jigme, can you please explain what you do with the Royal Government of Bhutan?
Okay, thank you. So what we've been doing in Bhutan is basically following suit from all the online, service industry, because our population has gotten accustomed to getting services easier and easier, and governments, as Sanjeeva was talking about, is the we by nature are very agile. I mean, we are very, we are not at all hierarchical, and we are very attuned to change. So my task is extremely easy. We have software engineers at the center of, focus for the bureaucracy. But anyway, the point is governments need to transform. We need to provide services in a very agile form. And being from a very small and developing country with limited resources, we have to make the most use or the most optimal use of the limited resources that we have. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to maximize our investments in existing technology. So we've, as a government, we have invested in a lot of technology, but our regulations and our policies have been changing so fast that a lot of times we have technology that we have just finished investing in, and suddenly it's no longer relevant. So we've had to rethink on how can we actually invest in technology that we can actually change at the same pace as regulations and policies. So what we have started doing is we've started developing in middle layer technology using the WSO2 technology stack to at least start integrating through the use of APIs information that already exists in these large technology solutions without having to make major changes. So I guess to start off with, that's what we're trying to do.
Thanks, Jigme. So we have a couple of questions as well. Since it's relevant to what we discussed now, there's a question for Nisala. What are the challenges you faced when implementing the first digital wallet in Sri Lanka? You want to take that?
Yeah, so there are a lot to be looked at when you are coming up with that sort of a disruptive model. So we want to bring the digital onboarding part. So that was it's a challenge for us. So the identity of the customers, the KYC, So to work with the regulator, so those are the real challenges. Then when it comes to the technology side, how fast we can go to the market with an iterative solution. So you have to have a solid architecture if you want to, go into market with a faster phase of iterations. So then what we looked at first, basically we went and looked at our existing architecture, where like say we had many challenges with integrating systems. So the first thing what we did was basically we fixed the architecture. So we came up with our enterprise architecture with the help of WSO2. So we use ESB, API Manager, and IS. So the APIs now can be exposed very easily. And even like if you want to go and put a product, it would be not a major challenge because the fundamentals have been done. Right. So that was the real, if you look at the technology side, the real winner for us.
Thanks. So let's go to the second question. So in Tyler's keynote, Tyler spoke about 75% of the organizations who follow some form of agile practice, but only 4% of those organizations see a real value or see the end benefit of agile. So my question is, how important is agility for your specific organizations? And I know we have a varied set of organizations, right? The private sector, the government sector, regulatory industries. So how important is agility and how practical is it? Because we spoke about agility, but how practical is it? So can I start with Jigme at that corner?
So I think especially for the government of Bhutan, agility is important in the sense that regulations and policies are constantly changing, and we cannot, we are not able to transform quickly enough with the large-scale monolithic applications that we are investing in currently. So that's why we are actually looking at the possibility of moving away from that architecture to something that is much more manageable. Unfortunately, we are at the inception stage in terms of implementation. So whether we can actually transition to a cell-based architecture or a level of granularity at that level for government, I think time will only tell.
All right. And can I switch and go to Yosha as well? So on the same lines, because you're also from the regulatory industry as well, how does agility play into that?
I think specifically in AFN's context, because this is the first time something like this is being attempted actually. We're building a two-sided marketplace where both banks and fintechs are there, where banks can also be fintech providers, can be API providers and API consumers, and similarly fintechs can be API providers and API consumers. So agility is very, very important because also fintechs are the ones who are innovating fast enough, and they want to put things fast enough as well. But I want to take a specific context in terms of what we're doing right now and how we're building the whole platform. An example that Sanjeev mentioned about, don't get caught up in the RFP process. That's exactly how when we started looking at what do we want in this technology platform and how do we want to build it, we realized that there's multiple components, right? There's a marketplace, there's the API console, there's a sandbox, and there's various software vendors, each of whom might have, some of these components and might be best at it. So instead of us trying to figure out who can be the best, we literally ran a very competitive process where we introduced everyone to everyone. We said, okay, these are our broad requirements. You guys come together as a consortium, group together, you build your proposals together, and then we'll evaluate and look at which proposals we see are the best. And then after that, we've actually run a very agile 4-week demonstration of capability process, as we call it, where again, we told them that, okay, we'll introduce you to some of our pilot banks, we'll introduce you to some of our pilot fintechs. Now go and build in the next 4 weeks what you think you can actually build in terms of what requirements we've sort of said we need in this platform, right? And at the end of those 4 weeks, we were all actually very surprised with how far each of these consortiums who we'd selected had gotten ahead in their process. And I think that was a clear example of how we worked as in a very agile fashion, and we saw very, very clear results in terms of, we could have never evaluated that just in terms of the responses in the proposals, but because we ran it as a live demonstration of capability, we saw very live results in that process.
So a similar question there for you again, Yosha, is did you define the actual API standards when it comes to like banking, digital banking?
At this point, we're not looking at standardizing APIs. We've literally said that, okay, the banks across ASEAN have said they want KYC capabilities. So we've curated KYC fintechs and we've asked them to, right now the platform is still being developed, right? But when it goes live, the fintechs will basically just host their APIs on the platform, and then it's up to the banks to look at those APIs, evaluate those APIs, and we'll give them the sandbox platform for them to be able to play around with those APIs. At some point, yes, there will be a time where we'll have to look at common standards, but not right now.
All right, thanks. So coming to Niranjan, again, same question. So how important is agility for the education sector? And you have a lot of experience working in the education sector. So this specific project as well as your overall experience.
It is very important, but because universities are public funded institutions, we have obligations to meet. It is competitive process. So the most of the time, what we trying to do is when we have a multi-year, multi-million-dollar projects, what we're trying to introduce agility is within that program. Though they are waterfall, but the software development cycle is an agile. So we have agile not being within IT, but also engaging the business so they understand defining the user stories and then playing that user stories back through that agile method, having a proper scrum master leading that activity, and then getting the outputs and mark that as a requirement to move on to the next stage. So we're introducing in a small scale so that we take others in our journey as well. But part of enabling that agility comes down to having the right source of information identified through the organization. We've done the complete IT review with 300 plus applications. We know which were the source of truth now, and also identify having a good data governance to say who should be the data steward for those data sources and how the data can be made available through. Currently, we have a lot of point-to-point integration. Right. We got the integration platform deployed last year. And we published what are the data fields which we can extract. And we made a one-stop shop for all the students. So though their academic records and their timetabling are all library borrowings, a lot of things are held at multiple different sources and applications. So we have developed structure where it's a one-stop shop so they can consume all those services. And we have a plan of work which can identify which one will enable now versus later, so that our data model for students, staff, and visitors keep developing, so that we know where to tap into the data. If it's already available in integration platform, so we can quickly enable it through the reuse of those APIs. And that's why the more reuse can be possible to cut down all this. Agility is important so that we can keep churning that over and over again.
Okay, thanks. So then we come back to Nisala, like the same topic. Again, I guess the challenge is being from a financial industry, you have the banking standards as well. So how does agility play a role there?
So if you look at banking industry, banking and financial industry, today is being challenged by the telcos and the fintechs. Right. So there's no, you got to either collaborate with them or basically you have faster solutions to go to the market. So the banking and financial sector, so there's no difference. Basically, you have to adapt to the agility. Otherwise, say, if you take a project and if you deliver, it will take 1 year, and you go to the market conditions would have been changed. So it's you have to go to the market with the iteration, and if it is fail fast, and come back and redevelop. So that's a strategy for the financial institutions in the today's context.
Right. Okay. Thanks. So there's a question from the audience as well on what motivated NTB to adopt or become the first open banking bank in Sri Lanka, even though there is no regulation mandating open banking yet. Can you answer to that?
Yeah. So like I said, why we went with open banking, basically, like I said, the entire financial sector is challenged by the fintechs.
Right.
So you have to start do things differently, right? So that's the whole motive, basically, for us to start collaborating with the fintechs and the startups So we are ready basically with our information. So we have two types of information. They count the information services and the banking services, which is already been. We have already the integrated with the many like the supermarkets, the online stores, especially on the freemium integrations are purely we are doing with this open banking concept. So the motive behind the open banking is basically to go ahead and collaborate with the fintechs and the startups and the SMEs and the large corporates.
Okay, thanks. Okay, when I spoke to you earlier as well, because of the nature of the organizations, like different projects deal with system integrators as well, right? So when we talk about agility, we talk about agility from our organization's perspective, but then for an end-to-end agility, I think we need to think about the system integrators as well. So starting with Jigme, because you work with a lot of system integrators, what are the challenges of basically extending agility all the way to partners and system integrators?
I guess the challenge that we have in Bhutan is most of our SIs are very used to the conventional waterfall methodology, and although we do tend to specify that an agile methodology needs to be incorporated specifically for government-led projects. One from the angle of having the ability to come out with a lot of iterations of software, but also on the other aspect for Bhutan, it's important. Most of our customers, government agencies, the professionals there don't really know exactly what they want, and they really need to see what is going to be delivered before they can actually finalize their requirements. So it's important that the SIs have the ability to be agile, but since they lack that culture, although we put it in our requirement specifications, most of the time there is a shift back to the waterfall methodology where we have to start finalizing our requirements beforehand, and scope, especially with our procurement norms, it's challenging, and I think we need to innovate on the way that governments carry out tendering and stuff. So,
All right.
So it's quite challenging right now.
Okay, so just a follow-up question there, because Yosha, you spoke about the RFP process as well, and Sanjeeva spoke about the advantage open source can bring there. To basically, like, you just download it, you test it, you figure it out, instead of going for an RFP. Do you think in a regulated industry, like World Bank regulations or government, do you think that is an option, or do you think like RFP will always be part and parcel of that selection process?
Yeah, I mean, it will take, like you mentioned, it will take time for that whole process to change in, fairly old school way of functioning in governments and other regulatory bodies. But I feel like even the regulators, especially in banking and financial world, all of them are innovating quite fast. And especially when there is, like with us, the Monetary Authority of Singapore is actually one of the biggest, evangelists, in fact, of innovation. And the fact that they've set up a regulatory sandbox, the fact that they're working with us in creating an entire, proposition like this, it is showing very clearly that regulators can also change their old school way of working, actually. So yes, it's a slow process, but it is clearly happening already. And the fact that big regulators are changing is leading the way for other countries as well.
Okay, yeah. And Nisala, so do you have thoughts on the SI part as well? So when we were having a chat, we spoke about the business being very agile. So you have requirements, you need to go to market very quickly. But then how do you really extend it all the way to partners and SIs? Can you share your thoughts as well on that?
Yeah, so the challenges for bank like us is because we will not have total development teams in-house. So we'll be totally rely on, we have development teams and we will be controlling the API layer. But when it comes to the application development, we always look forward for the integration partner. So the challenge which we are facing is the timelines which the business is demanding and even IT wants. Meeting those timelines with this is the challenge, because it's working, like in some sectors, some applications it's working, but the overall, like he said, there's no difference. It's a challenge for us as well.
Okay, right, thanks. So Niranjan, coming back to you, so you are currently working on the integration part of WSO2 for ACU. There is the whole API management side and how you basically would expose APIs so that the student bodies and the different portals can consume those APIs, right? So all of that boils down to how sustainable the platform is, and whether you have the right set of people publishing APIs, the right set of people consuming the APIs, and the right set of groups using the APIs the right way. How do you tackle that sustainability problem from a platform perspective?
Just a platform or including the process?
Yes, the process as well. So basically, how do you make sure that once you deploy technology, that the actual users use the platform or the systems in the intended way?
So, I mean, as the earlier speaker highlighted, we do have a ICT governance as well. So as a part of you develop anything, we go through the governance and publish that as a standard, whether it's a coding standard, whether it's an infrastructure standard or cloud adoption. So part of when the SI partner, like we have a core set of people inside, internal to university, and we rely quite a lot on external partners to work with. So, and you did mention RFP earlier. So in RFP, that area is also changing in the sense, if we prove them they are the valid and valid partner to work with, there is we don't have to go through 3 to 6 months of processing. Right. So what happens is once we start publishing the integration APIs, that becomes a standard, and we are currently in the process of developing API repository. So when the partners who we work with we also have a scalable model which we work with a couple of vendors where they can meet that scaling up and down of resources so that they can come on board very quickly rather than going through the lot of RFP. So when they come in, there is a set of standards they have to work with, what platform we use for integration, what are the APIs they can consume, and where is the data governance come into picture to get the right approval. Right. So that's where we build that in sustainability model, both from finance perspective and also from the standard perspective, so that repository, both from technology and non-technology, keeps growing, which can be consumable. And also, more important thing is that is published and made aware, so that they don't come and build in the name of Agile, lot of many solutions which we can't support later.
Right.
So that's the 2-track options.
Okay, thanks, Niranjan. So there's a number of questions from the audience as well, so let's address a few of them. So one of the questions is, any strategies you use to minimize infrastructure costs during your digital transformation journey? Would anyone like to take that?
So in the government, what we've done is to reduce the cost of infrastructure, we've done a lot of centralization. So investing in a government cloud so that respective agencies don't actually have to make these kind of deployments. So similarly, we've deployed a government-wide data exchange platform using the WSO2 technology stack, so that the different sectors don't actually, for example, you don't need to have a finance technology stack for exchange of data. What we've also done is we've used the WSO2 identity server, so that we can have a single sign-on platform for all citizens to apply, avail services. So in that way, although centralizing may not necessarily be what everybody is happy about, but it does have its advantages in reducing the cost of infrastructure.
Right, thanks. So there's another question which leads up to our other question. So this is for Nisala. So I'll read this out word to word. So it says, building this level of technology is amazing. What was your experience on talent acquisition? and building a team who is ready to take up this integration agile challenge. So that leads to the other question of the people aspect. Asanka and Sanjeeva both focused on the people aspect. How do you drive change? How do you have your change agents for this? And how do you really acquire talent and ensure that they can be agile? Can I start with Nisala?
So, start with the agile support should come from the top. So from luckily for us, basically from the board to the CEO to we have that blessing.
Perfect.
So and what we have done for the disruptive application like FreeMe, we have formed a separate team. So it's purely operating as a startup company. So although they're part of the bank, but I mean they have the liberty of innovate, come with their own innovation, and so that's a key challenge which we overcome by having a separate team, and they operate purely in a startup company like a fintech. So that's how basically we have came across this challenge, and so to support that from IT side and even the business side, or even the compliance side. So everybody is aware that the journey what we are going to go through. So it's coming from the top, and basically, so everyone is aligned to that one. Otherwise, it's it would be a difficult journey for us to start a freebie kind of application and come to the market like this.
Would anyone else give you?
I mean, I would absolutely agree with that. It has to be when it's driven from the top, and then implementation starts from the bottom up, of course. And I can take a specific example 4.5 years ago when I was working in a different organization and I was a product owner. And we were actually moving from this whole waterfall methodology to the agile methodology. But as the product owner, I was told, I mean, I was doing all the documentation that I was doing anyway. And on top of that, I was also doing user stories and all the additional documentation for agile, right? So, which obviously didn't resonate well with the team, because it almost felt like, and plus, in terms of the testing and everything, when the code comes to us for testing, it's not like we were seeing significant improvements. So we're almost like, okay, we're being asked to do extra work, but we're not really seeing any improvements for that extra work, actually, right? So I think, yeah, just waterfall covered up with, all the terminology of agile doesn't really work. It has to be completely driven from the top down and bottom up both. And at the end of the day, teams have to function as not just centers of excellence alone, but actually each team has to function in complete agility, actually. That's the only way for Agile to work.
Okay. All right. So another question from the panel. Again, so this is a WSO2 specific one. So in your quest of digital transformation, can you name one key aspect brought by WSO2 that made you choose WSO2 technology? I don't know whether this is from one of our guys out there, but would love to hear your thoughts.
The reason why we chose WSO2 is because it's end-to-end open source. When we actually had the option of looking at an enterprise service bus, we started off with the ESP, and at that time we had the option of looking at Mule and WSO2, and we found that Mule was, the community edition had limited functionality, so and we wanted to look at an open source platform.
Anyone else? Nisala?
So for us, basically, say there are larger systems to integrate, some of legacy systems as well. So, but I mean, at the end of the day, we have to expose a common API set. And the security side is the other side, because we all deal with the fund transfers, the money, people money. So the security is a key aspect for us. And so I mean, those are the two major things for us to choose the WSO2.
Okay.
I can add to that as well. For us, I mean, AFIN is almost functioning as a small little startup within the overall IFC ecosystem, right? So for us, and for me as a product owner, I was very easily able to use the WSO2 API console to literally like rebrand it a little, add some of our, fintechs, get some of our fintechs to add their APIs, and literally use that to demonstrate to the banks that this can function easily enough, and you can use this, very easily to look at the APIs of different fintechs and test. So that was one of the reasons for why we chose WSO2 as our for testing out a pilot platform.
Niranjan, anything to add?
I think pretty much all the same requirements for us. It ticked most of the boxes, but we did do the competitive analysis as well. And because it was a new capability, we didn't want to do the heavy investment upfront, being open source, try it out, and journey so far has been good. It met all our key requirements, including the peak period transactions, so no complaints.
All right, thanks. So we just have a minute left. Is there any questions from the audience as well? Because I promised that we'll send the mic around. So any questions that take just a minute? No? Okay, so we do have a few questions on the survey left, but since we're running out of time, the panelists would be around. So you can always catch up with them either today during the networking session or tomorrow. We have a great lineup tomorrow. We have a great set of speakers and very technical sessions as well tomorrow. So please join us tomorrow. Again, thank you, Jigme, Misela, Yosha, and Niranjan. Thank you for your time. And hope to see you all around, and hope to see you tomorrow. Right. Thank you.